Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 online action. Well, I say online action, it's actually just me and Gobbo King doing some testing, so a big shout out to him for helping me out. Today we're going to be taking a look at the High Elves and testing them up against some of the Old World factions. Because of the limitations of the mod, unfortunately I didn't get to do all the tests that I wanted, but we'll definitely take a look at some things and see what we can learn. First things first is we're going to be testing some Chaos units. I wanted to test Chaos Knights with Lances up against Dragon Princes since they're pretty close in terms of cost and roll. I also wanted to test Chaos Marauders against low-tier Spearmen and others. For this first engagement, we are going to get it on this hill, which is going to swing things a little bit in the Dragon Prince's favor, but let's go ahead and watch to see what happens. So yeah, you can see the Dragon Princes and doing a lot of shock damage on the charge there. They do have the same charge bonus. Chaos Knights with Lances have 2 more weapon strength. Let's look at the spread here. 32 versus 14 for these guys, and 32 versus 12. Okay, so the Chaos Knights just have 2 more armor piercing, which is very pertinent. Of course, the Dragon Princes have Martial Mastery, so their stats are going to be much better at the start of this fight. Martial Mastery, of course, gives +8 melee attack and +12 melee defense. The Chaos Knights also have 10 more armor and are considerably slower at 12 less speed. So it's very interesting. They also cause fear and have no resistances, whereas the Dragon Princes have fire resistance and physical resistance. So that's going to be very nice. Of course, the Regiment of Renowned Chaos, Swords of Chaos rather, they are not in this mod. There's no Regiments of Renown or DLC units, and even the Chaos roster is about half complete. It's missing quite a few units, but we're still able to get some testing done. But I think the Dragon Princes are going to be very good against the Swords of Chaos, but because of the hill there, we decided to test the next few a little bit differently. For this next cav engagement, we're going to kind of engage crossways across the hill. That way neither of us has a distinct advantage, because I do think this hill did swing that in Gobbo's advantage. I'm not sure, you know, we were kind of discussing it beforehand and I was like, I don't think it's going to make that big of a difference, but it ended up making quite a bit of a difference here, as you'll see. With this more even engagement here, we'll kind of get a nice cinematic shot as these two units of knights clash here. Very good looking stuff. 2 of the best units in the game, best looking units in the game, and best heavy cavalry in general. But you can see the Dragon Prince is taking quite a bit of shock damage this time, and it's roughly equivocal here. Once the Dragon Princes drop their Martial Mastery, the Chaos Knights with Lances are going to have a lot easier time dealing with them. So let's see, it's still up as of right now. Let's see, it should be dropping off anytime soon here. Yep, and there it goes. So now they're down to their base stats of 36 and 30. So they're definitely going to be losing to the 42 and 34 of the Chaos Knights with Lances. But let's go ahead and fast forward through the end of this engagement here, and we'll see who's able to pull out the win. It is very, very, very close, and probably not really cost effective for the Chaos Knights with Lances. It's hard to say, you know, both of them have now got an experienced chevron, so they're both trading very well. And right now it's, I mean, the Dragon Princes have 1 more unit model, it looks like. So it's really, really close. Chaos Knights with Lances are 100 more expensive, if I remember correctly. But it's pretty close. You'd expect them to win here, and it does look like they're going to win out on this engagement that was a bit more even. So for the rest of the engagements, we're going to take them over on this flat ground over here, just to make sure that neither of us has a distinct advantage. But yeah, in this fight, this second test, we did get some, you know, there is some RNG to it, but that hill advantage, you know, it plays into it more than I thought it did. But I guess that's a good test of showing, you know, how much of an advantage having an uphill is, you know, especially with a cavalry charge if you're charging downhill. So next up, we're going to bring over some Chosen and test them against Sword Masters of Hoeth, Chosen with great weapons, that is. So we're going to get these guys moving up, and they're going to be fighting up against the Sword Masters of Hoeth. So let's go ahead and do a quick stat comparison here. Their stats are honestly pretty close. The Sword Masters have less overall weapon strength, but they do have a bonus versus infantry. Let's have a look at the spread here. So it looks like a 25 armor piercing and 14 bonus versus infantry, giving a total of 39 that would be applied to the Chosen. let's go ahead and look at the Chosen's weapon strength. They actually have 36 armor piercing. So in terms, if you add the anti-infantry and the armor piercing of the Swordmasters together, it's pretty close. The Chosen do have 30 more armor. And let's see, they have a 32 charge bonus compared to only 20 for Swordmasters, so they'll certainly win on the charge. Their base stats are probably better, but with martial mastery, or excuse me, Swordmasters just have martial prowess. I totally thought they had martial mastery. Anyway, with martial prowess up, the Swordmasters' overall combat stats, their melee attack and defense are going to be better. But let's go ahead and see what happens. We are going to get these guys charging forward. So we'll go ahead and fast forward just a little bit here, but you can see on the damage, the Chosen do quite a bit of shock damage on the charge. In this engagement, the Swordmasters are still trading pretty effectively. Over in this engagement, it's more of the same, but as the Swordmasters get lower and lower, as soon as that martial prowess drops, they're going to start to have a really bad time. They're holding it together pretty well, though. I mean, considering Chosen with great weapons are, what, 1,500? I need to double check. I don't quite remember, but the Swordmasters of Hoeth are pretty close in terms of cost. They are a little bit cheaper, so you would expect them to lose out here, but you know, they're trading pretty cost effectively overall. The Chosen are taking a lot of damage, so we'll go ahead and fast forward through the end here. But Chosen with great weapons seem to have gotten a bit of a buff. I'm not 100% sure about that. I would need to compare game to game, which I haven't done yet, but it does seem like they're a little bit better than they used to be. They both were able to win there, both picking up an XP chevron, both the Swordmasters of Hoeth as well picking up an XP chevron. So overall, that was a pretty good trade both ways, I would say. Chosen with great weapons are very expensive, so it's tough to make them work, but I think they could potentially have a niche against the High Elves. We'll see. There are no Chaos Warriors with great weapons, unfortunately. That's one of the units I wanted to test, but I'd imagine they're going to be a good pick as well. They're probably roughly equivalent to the White Lions. But next up, we're going to be testing just basic Spearmen against plain old Marauders. Yes, indeed, a low-tier test. But this is actually a very important test because Marauders are, I think, really cost-effective. They're very cheap, and they punch really hard for cheap infantry. Spearmen, on the other hand, are 500, and they're really good. Don't get me wrong, 50 melee defense is awesome. But they just don't have a lot of killing power, and, you know, if you could potentially bring a lot of Marauders, you know, you could bring 4 to 6 Marauders and just overwhelm with numbers, you know, the Spearmen, will they trade cost effectively here? That's what I wanted to see. Or will the Marauders rather trade more cost effectively? And so far it looks like the Marauders are doing fairly well considering they're 125 less expensive, if I remember right. So in this fight, they're actually winning over here at the moment. The martial prowess is still up for both the units of Spearmen, but looks like it's now dropped off this unit here. This unit here is actually winning a little bit better, and this is why I wanted to do 2 tests at the same time, because there is a bit of RNG to it. But over here, these Chaos Marauders are trading super cost effectively. I mean, considering these Spearmen are, like I said, a little bit more expensive, this is really nice. And, you know, if you just brought a whole bunch of these guys, granted, they'll get carved up by, you know, Swordmasters and White Lions. But if you just bring them as a holding force and then use, like, chariots or other, you know, Forsaken around the flanks, other ways to deal with the other infantry, you could potentially win out. Eventually, the leadership of the High Elves holding together better. You can see, in terms of HP, I actually won on this fight. These Spearmen only have about 1,000 HP versus 1,700 for these Chaos Marauders. So, you know, that was a good engagement. I would say I won that even though I lost in terms of leadership. This other engagement, though, the Spearmen were able to win fairly decisively, so very interesting. And for this last test, we'll go ahead and fast forward mostly through this one. Since there were no Chaos Warriors with great weapons, I was like, oh, what the heck, we'll see what Chosen can do up against White Lions. Chosen are close to double the cost. They're not quite double the cost of White Lions, but they're pretty close. So let's see if the White Lions can at least do about half HP damage to the Chosen before they get killed, which they are certainly going to get killed here. But you can see already on the charge, they just took a ton of shock damage there. And yeah, they're not even going to be able to do half HP damage to these Chosen with great weapons without dropping. So I do think that Chosen with great weapons are going to be a bit better once Mortal Empires comes out. It's tough to say, you know, just because they're so expensive, and it's really hard to make expensive infantry work. But we'll see. You know, we'll see if they're able to make it work. So for the finale here, this is one that's going to take a really long time. We're going to have Archaon, the Never Chosen, up against Tyrion, the also doesn't have any armor piercing. It's pretty funny. Both of them have these flaming swords and really poor armor piercing, but I did want to showcase one thing real quick. They have made some changes to Slayer of Kings, so it now gives some huge weapon damage buffs to Archaon. You can see his total weapon strength is up to 808, which is ridiculous. It has 240 armor piercing and 568 base weapon strength. Of course, the Slayer of Kings now gives 60% weapon damage, 60% armor piercing, and 32% splash attack power. So that's really good, and it probably makes this item worth taking. It's still going to take a super long time just because neither of these guys have great AP, but yeah, we're actually just going to fast forward through this one. It's seriously going to take, you can see there's 9 minutes left in the battle timer, and that is mostly just Tyrion and Archaon whacking on each other. But, you know, I wanted to just see how it would go. Both these guys are kind of a similar niche, except that, you know, Archaon obviously has access to fire magic, and he is quite a bit slower. Tyrion is probably the fastest heavy cavalry lord in the game at 94 speed. That's super, super fast. I mean, that's just blazing speed for a heavy cavalry lord. So he does have that on Archaon, and he has martial prowess. So, of course, his combat stats at the start of this fight are going to be very good. 72 melee defense and 79 melee attack with that martial prowess active. But, yeah, so far it looks like Archaon's actually winning out on this fight. Actually, maybe not. Looks like, I mean, he has more overall HP, so it's a little bit hard to say, but you know, they have pretty close in terms of armor and other stats. Charge bonus is pretty close to the same. Looks like Archaon takes that just a little bit because he has Frenzy. He has Frenzy. Interesting. Did he have Frenzy before? I cannot recall, honestly. I'll have to check that, but it's very interesting. They might have added that in. I honestly can't remember if Archaon had Frenzy before. If so, I mean, that's a decent little buff. Plus 8 melee attack, charge bonus, weapon damage. It's all good stuff. So immune to psychology is always nice too. But Archaon should probably be immune to psychology baseline, to be honest. But yeah, you can see these guys just ineffectually poking away at each other for quite some time. And Tyrion did bring the Heart of Averlorn, so that's going to proc here eventually when he gets low enough. But you can see it's less than 10% HP. Once he drops below there, he's going to get a nice healing burst. But Archaon with the Slayer of Kings is actually pretty well pulling out this fight. They're pretty close in terms of cost if you cut all of Archaon's spells. Of course, you know, in this type of engagement, you'd probably be self-buffing with the Cascading Fire Cloak, or maybe Flaming Sword of Ruin. But Tyrion there, getting very, very low. He's about to proc the Heart of Averlorn. So let's see here. Any minute now if Archaon can actually make contact. But even with the martial prowess dropped, they have very, very close stats in terms of combat stats. But that 808 weapon strength from the Slayer of Kings is just so ridiculous. That's so much. I mean, even like with the way base weapon strength works, I mean, even that if it's not armor piercing, a lot of that's still going to be getting through. So that's a lot. Is that going to make Archaon worth taking? Probably not, but you never know. Archaon's very, very low now, though. He does have Tyrion down to 268 hit points. Archaon himself is wavering at 367 hit points, so it ended up being incredibly close with the Heart of Averlorn and everything else taken into account. But we'll go ahead and fast forward just a little bit more here. Tyrion's actually going to rally, and then we're going to get one final charge here. So let's go along for a ride with Archaon as he smacks Tyrion down. Yes, indeed. So Archaon's looking to be superior to Tyrion, just in terms of a pure duelist perspective, at least if you bring the Slayer of Kings. I'd imagine if I hadn't brought that Slayer of Kings, I would have lost. I mean, I'm down to 42 hit points, so I mean, that's as close as it can get, pretty much. I'm sure if we did that test a few more times, it could potentially turn out differently. I mean, I don't get me wrong, Tyrion potentially has the capacity to win that fight, but I'm pretty sure everyone's just going to bring Kolek in this matchup, so let's go ahead and take a look at a bit more testing here. Honestly, there's not a lot of reason not to bring Kolek or Big Bird, or I mean, I guess against the High Elves they don't have any AP missiles, so yeah, Kolek was probably the way to go, to be honest. Let's see here. Next up, we're going to be testing some Bretonnians against the High Elves. I wanted to test out cavalry. I'm confident that Bretonnian cavalry is superior for the cost to High Elf cavalry. Don't get me wrong, Dragon Princes are really good. Silver Helms are okay. They're not great. They're decent. But Bretonnian's bread and butter is its cavalry. So, I mean, that's how they're supposed to win. I mean, you see a lot of peasant infantry spam, you know, in Total War Warhammer 1. But, you know, their knights are definitely good, so at least thematically that's where they're supposed to shine. So first we're going to test Grail Knights up against Dragon Princes. Again, two of the best looking heavy cavalry units in the game. So we're just getting things lined up here, and man, you forget sometimes how just awesome these old world units look, and I do think they updated a lot of the textures and a lot of the like metal surfaces. The reflections look a lot better in this game. Let's go ahead and ride along with this unit of Grail Knights here as they charge into these Dragon Princes. And let's go ahead and look at the HP bars just to see how things are going. You can see it's pretty close, honestly. It's a lot closer than I thought it was going to be, just because the Grail Knights have anti-large and magic damage, which is going to cut straight through the physical resistance of the Dragon Princes. But you can see the martial mastery of the Dragon Princes has already dropped off. You know, they're still doing quite a bit of damage, but with that martial mastery gone, they're going to start to fall behind these Grail Knights in a big hurry. You can see this unit, though, the Dragon Princes, and this unit of Dragon Princes also already picking up a chevron. Grail Knights are not far behind. That one they're picking up a chevron just now, and this one's very, very close. So, yeah, I expected the Grail Knights to win here because of their anti-large and magic damage. But the Dragon Princes were able to fare, you know, fairly well for themselves, considering they're kind of a, you know, the Grail Knights are a bit of a hard counter to the Dragon Princes in many aspects. They're still able to trade pretty effectively there, just on a head-up charge, so definitely Bretonnian cavalry is superior, and for the cost, I mean, Dragon Princes are very close to Grail Knights in terms of cost, but yeah, definitely looks to be in Bretonnian's favor in that engagement. Granted, High Elf infantry is miles more elite than Bretonnian infantry. I mean, High Elves have spearmen, and then that's it. Like, the rest of their infantry is more expensive than all of the infantry the Bretonnians have. I mean, their most expensive is 800 for their Regiment of Renown infantry, so that's like the same as a unit of White Lions. So that's just a little bit of perspective on how far apart these two are in terms of infantry. Granted, the peasants can be very powerful just because you can bring huge numbers of peasants, but yeah, the Bretonnian cavalry is definitely superior to the High Elf cavalry. This fight as well, I expect the Knights of the Realm to do well here, to actually win out. They have 90 armor, which is exactly the same here. Their combat stats otherwise are very, very close. Of course, with the martial prowess, the Silver Helms have a bit better combat stats, but the Knights of the Realm do have an anti-large bonus and a roughly equivocal charge. Looks like the Knights of the Realm actually take the charge a little bit there, but you can see they're pretty well flipping over these Silver Helms. Silver Helms did do quite a bit of damage on the charge there, but considering these units cost the same, this is pretty bad for the Silver Helms. So, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Silver Helms to begin with. I only bring them in a few niche matchups anyway. But, yeah, Knights of the Realm are super cost-effective, you know, heavy cavalry, so expected them to win, and they did fairly decisively. We'll go ahead and fast forward through the end here. I think we all pretty much know, yeah, I mean, these guys winning out with about 40% of their HP still intact. It's a rough day for the Silver Helms, so well played to the Knights of the Lady. Next up, one final test here. I wanted to test Illyrian Reavers versus Mounted Yeomen. Reavers are only 200 more expensive, which is a bit more, but they are considerably better in many ways. They just have way better overall stats, better charge bonus, weapon damage, everything. But I wanted to see if the Mounted Yeomen could trade cost effectively here and, you know, do enough damage to justify themselves. And spoiler alert, they're not. They're getting destroyed by these Illyrian Reavers. And, I mean, the Reavers are super cost effective, even though they are a bit on the expensive side for light cavalry. 600's you know, more expensive than a lot of other light cavalry in the game, but they do very well for themselves. They just completely destroyed those mounted yeomen. That was not cost effective at all for the yeomen, so very nice for the high elves. Looks like they do have a light cavalry advantage, but the heavy cavalry definitely goes to Bretonnia there, so it's a bit what I expected, but still interesting to see. Both the Dragon Princes were still able to pick up a chevron there on the Grail Knights, so that could potentially be cost effective. Both of these factions have healing, so both have the potential to heal their cavalry in that fight. So, you know, that's interesting. It's going to be an interesting matchup for sure. And one more here. We're going to do a bit of War of the Beard testing. So we've got White Lions testing up against Longbeards with great weapons, which, I mean, they're 50 apart in cost and very equivocal units in terms of a lot of ways, so we'll take a look at that. We've also got Swordmasters testing up against Hammerers and Swordmasters testing up against Ironbreakers, just to see how all that goes. So just waiting for things to load in here. I've noticed that the game tends to hang up a little bit on that last phase of loading, but anyway, we'll go ahead and get in here and have a look as these White Lions get ready to face up against their Longbeard counterparts. So let's have a look at a quick stat comparison. These guys are extremely close in terms of stats. They actually have identical weapon strength. Charge bonus does go to the White Lions. Granted, Longbeards have charge defense against large, so that's not really pertinent here, but it is a bit of an advantage. You can see the charge is going to the White Lions pretty well there, but overall, the White Lions have better stats. Well, they actually have less melee defense, but they have better melee attack while the martial prowess is active. Once that drops off, they're still going to have pretty equivocal stats. 10 less armor, and the White Lions, of course, are a little bit faster, but they're really, really close in terms of stats. So let's go ahead and fast forward just a little bit here as these guys hack away at each other. White Lions are doing very, very well for themselves, but once that martial prowess drops, you can see the Longbeards kind of start to pull it back a little bit. But this fight here, it looks like the Longbeards are going to lose pretty decisively. This other fight is a lot closer, and I mean, these Longbeards are trading really nicely here, I would say. Longbeards with great weapons are just a very cost-effective unit overall, but they're doing very well for themselves here. I think the White Lions are still going to win out just barely, but this is definitely trading at cost for the Longbeards with great weapons, so that's really nice. Next up, you can see Gabbo's lining up the Hammerers here. We're going to be testing them out against the Swordmasters of Hoeth as soon as these guys finish it off here. But you can see a very atrocious, bloody fight here, fighting down to just a few unit models on each side. 16 unit models versus 12 for the Longbeards, so very close fight. Now, time for the heavy hitters, the big boys, the Swordmasters and the Hammerers. Let's get right to it. So, in terms of stats, the Swordmasters have less overall weapon strength, but their stats are actually worse overall. Or, no, sorry, I was looking at the wrong unit here. The Hammerers actually have worse stats overall than the Swordmasters, but let's see how it goes. Swordmasters so far look to be winning out for the most part. Yes, very decisively, actually, in this engagement as well. The Swordmasters only have 2 more charge bonus, and although the Hammerers have much better overall weapon strength at 55, 41 of that being armor piercing, of course, we know from the other test, this is 39, so it's pretty close in terms of total weapon strength, but you can see how the better combat stats, 48 attack and 50 defense on Swordmasters is so good, versus only 46 and 34 melee, only 34 melee defense for the Hammers, so that does mean that the Swordmasters are going to be making super solid contact, and you can see this one won without even dropping martial prowess. Actually, both of them won without even dropping martial prowess, so Hammerers are still in a pretty bad place, it looks like. They're definitely going to need some more buffs to be cost effective, but not really a unit I would recommend taking against the High Elves. It looks like Longbeards with great weapons are going to be a really nice pick here, and maybe just going wider. I mean, of course, Dwarf Warriors, I'd imagine, would pretty much dump on spears. We didn't really test that here, but just because of their high armor, I'd imagine they'd win that fight. And, you know, you also have Thunderers and Cannons, a distinct artillery and ranged advantage. I mean, the High Elf Archers aren't going to be able to do much versus, like, Quarrelers and Thunderers, say. So, you know, I definitely think that the Dwarfs have some good tools in this matchup, but of course there's the Tyrannok Chariot, like a sorcerer, or sorry, not a sorcerer, a mage on a chariot. There's some other tools that the High Elves have that could potentially win out this fight. Swordmasters look to be a very good pick here as well, of course. But let's go ahead and watch as they charge into these Ironbreakers. I'm expecting them to beat the Ironbreakers. I mostly just want to see how much damage they can do with the blasting charges before they get into the fight, because if you were able to, say, get some nice volleys of blasting charges, maybe a couple volleys of thunder fire, and drop the martial prowess of the Swordmasters before they get into combat or shortly thereafter, the Ironbreakers could potentially hold out a little better here, but the issue they're going to face is just the heavy weapon strength of the Swordmasters of Hoeth versus infantry. It's really going to be a bad time for these Ironbreakers once all the unit models kind of get into contact. Let's go ahead and fast forward and see what happens. You can see they're still able to chuck their charges even though they're engaged in some cases. But now that all the unit models are here inside the minimum range, you can see the Ironbreaker starting to lose out quite a bit. This unit almost dropped its martial prowess, you know, as it was still filing in, but it's yeah, it looks like they're still just barely dropping off that that martial prowess. Of course, the Ironbreakers had charge defense against all, so the 20 charge bonus of the Swordmasters didn't matter too much there. But yeah, that's kind of what I expected, but not really what I was hoping for. Of course, the Norgrimling's Ironbreakers are probably, you know, going to be that much better just because they have insane stats. It's just the lack of armor piercing for Ironbreakers is going to be a bit tough against the elite tier, you know, high elf infantry. So it's going to be a tough time. You can see Ungrim's actually come over here and punching my lord. I'm sure he's got all kinds of grudges to settle. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that bit of High Elf versus the Old World testing. Just wanted to see kind of how some of their units would stack up to some of the units that we know and love. So some conclusions we can draw. Definitely cavalry advantage goes to Bretonnia, at least heavy cavalry. The Illyrian Reavers are going to be probably pretty nice in that matchup, I would imagine. For Chaos, of course, they're chosen with great weapons could potentially be good here. It's tough to say. Chaos Knights with lances could potentially be good here as well. Of course, I didn't test out Phoenix Guard in any of these, but that would be interesting to test as well to see, you know, how chosen with great weapons do against Phoenix Guard, for example. Yeah, I do think that Chaos is going to be an interesting one for the High Elves to deal with because they don't have any armor-piercing missiles, and their troops kind of suffer from the same issue, not to the same degree, but that Chaos suffered in patch 1 of the first game, which is that they just don't have a lot of cost-effective infantry, and it's tough for them to really, you know, field wide armies and deal with a lot of things. So don't get me wrong, the High Elves are really good, but I think that Chaos will have a lot of really good answers to what the High Elves can bring, so we'll wait and see. But in terms of the High Elves versus the Dwarves, I do think the Dwarves could have a shot here, especially with some of the buffs they've got recently, you know, to the items that I showed off earlier. And they're going to be a lot better. They're potentially going to be, you know, viable in a lot more matchups than they used to be, and I do think that they can handle the High Elves because the High Elves can't bring a lot of numbers. And they don't have any armor-piercing missiles, and they just don't have the tools that a lot of the other factions have. They do have some tools, but I do think that this is going to be a relatively favorable matchup for the Dwarfs, you know, as favorable as it can be. But, yeah, hope you guys enjoyed watching. Just some pure speculation, of course. We won't know how all this actually plays out until Mortal Empires comes out. All of this is subject to change, so, you know, Creative Assembly could change a lot of the stuff that I've tested here, and it could be completely different. But, you know, it still kind of gives us an idea, and who knows, maybe somebody from Creative Assembly is watching this, and they can see how the balance stacks up and make changes where appropriate, you know, to make sure that things trade cost-effectively in general. But, yeah, hope you guys enjoyed watching. If you like this kind of content, like and subscribe. I'm keeping it coming with more Total War Warhammer 2 content every single day, so stay tuned for more, and we'll see you next time.